Welcome to the podcast of the impossible. I'm Peter Wood, and my guest today is a musician, producer, magician, and so much more. It's Jeff Eline. I think that is that music important, or should that get cut?
That's very professional. I think it's awesome.
Makes it feel real.
I like want to wake up every day to that.
Yep.
Just jump out of bed.
No, you can, and it's and you don't have to pay any royalties for it
No?
either. So it's great.
Just stole it off the internet.
I spared no expense. I believe I bought it, but I bought it from someone who doesn't mind selling it to everyone and have everyone play it.
Fiverr?
Everywhere.
Did you get off Fiverr?
No, I mean it was a compendium of some other. Fiverr's a little rich. That's
You're not going to spend that
it's
kind
not
of money.
custom composed. It's
Not for you. Like,
Yeah,
we
yeah.
get some real stars in here.
It is fun. Every now and then you do hear, like, I'll listen to podcasts. I'm like, wait, was that piece of music from the, like, I'll
notice it.
There's only so much royalty free stuff out there that, So one thing we sort of talked about the last time we chatted was, you had this interest in both magic and music. And then sort of for a while music took off, and now you still do music, but circling back to magic. And there was a time where I was interested in both magic and playing the piano, and I was practicing both, and I found that I enjoyed practicing magic more than I enjoyed practicing the piano, and so eventually that's why the piano went to the wayside.
Yeah, sure.
But even now, I'm not a huge sleight of hand practitioner. I have the ability to do things, but I get the sense, but I guess whether you can say lazy or efficient, it's up to you. If there is a way that I can do it that just as good or even better without sleight of hand, then I'm going to be more inclined to build something mechanical or to craft something. Right. But I get the sense that a lot of times the joy for you is the process of training your hands and body to do something.
Yeah.
I guess I'm curious. Can you talk a little bit about that? And especially, like, does it tie in at all with music or?
Yeah. Well, the practice part absolutely does.
Yeah.
I've been playing guitar since I was 5. I've probably been doing magic since I was 6. They're very similar. And the process of practicing, especially when it comes to sleight of hand, and especially when it comes to cards. I mean, I do all sleight of hand, cards and coins and dice and whatever. But cards in particular, there is a tactile sensation.
Sure.
But the overall psychology of practicing is that you have an endpoint. So you know what this trick should look like,
right?
Or you know what this song should sound like. And when you start off, it's crappy. And then you start making these incremental changes and practicing and doing more. And eventually, if you're lucky, you do get to that end point where the trick looks the way you think it should look.
Sure. Okay.
Or some reasonable facsimile. Or the song sounds like it should sound. So that for me, the practice is very parallel. I find it very similar and very satisfying. I have probably a weird quirk in me that enjoys practicing.
Sure. Okay.
And I enjoy fiddling too. And I think that is underrated as far as getting to proficiency in that I always have, for the most part, I have access to a deck of cards, and I will fidget with them while I'm watching the news or whatever. And while I'm fidgeting, there's no end point. Like, I'm not working on a routine to try and get this card out or controlled or forced or whatever. Yeah. I'm just fidgeting. Okay. But that time, I think, is more valuable than we give credit to, because my hands learn how to hold and learn that they fall this way, and when they fall this way, I can stop them, or whatever it is. And the same thing with guitar. Like, you could just sit on the couch and just kind of noodle.
Right.
Well, your fingers are starting to develop those skills of how hard to press and where to press. Are you close to the fret? Are you away from the fret?
Sure.
All those things that you're not even conscious about will start to come about and develop just by fidgeting. And so I do tend to always have cards or coins, or if I'm sitting down, I'll be playing the guitar and just kind of fidgeting. And I think that's valuable. But regular, focused practice where I sit down and going, I'm going to work on this trick, or I'm going to work on this song or whatever, is to me very similar and very satisfying. So
Okay.
I like that. But overall, when you were talking about sleight of hand, and obviously that's a method,
Right.
and I consider it a tool.
Yeah.
And it is sometimes the best tool, and sometimes it's not.
Right.
And so when you say you wanted to, you want to try and find a non-sleight of hand method for a trick.
Yeah.
You then added, thankfully, as long as it makes it better.
Right. Sure.
And I have a problem with magicians who want to do away with sleight of hand simply because they don't want to put in the work.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
And you know what? Sometimes sleight of hand is the best method.
Yep. Yeah.
And so, you got to bite the bullet, and you've got to do it. But man, when you find, like you said, so you've been doing this trick, and then all of a sudden some genius from Spain or Japan or
Sure.
Wherever shows you a version of it that is just as good, if not better.
Right.
And you don't have to do the sleight of hand. I love that. I
Sure.
As much as I love sleight of hand and as much as I practice it, that to me is genius.
Right.
Like, oh man, why didn't I think of that?
Right.
I will say, going back to practice, I think you might find this interesting. Before we came on air, we were talking about technology and stuff.
Sure.
So when I got moved back to my hometown to work with my father, it was the very beginning of the internet. I think AOL was certainly out there, and most people knew the internet via AOL. And the internet's been around around for a lot longer, but it just started to get public acceptance and notice in those early 90 years.
Right.
But you were dial-up modem.
Yeah.
And so, you'd click on a page and it would just take forever to load. Sometimes it'd get stuck and stuff like that. I learned a lot of my sleight of hand during those days because I would hit a button, hit a link, and it would, I could see it loading, and it was going to take a while. And I would sit there and shuffle, and I'd do all my false shuffles.
That's
and
cool.
Table work in specific for cards. For those of you out there that are not familiar with magic, card magic has all these different rooms, all these different genres. Yeah. And one of them is what's called table work, and it kind of mimics what happens at the card table in casinos. And it's really intricate. It's hard sleight of hand, and I really enjoyed it. But during those times when those websites would load, I'd be doing strip outs and false shuffles, and I swear I'm better at sleight of hand because of slow internet in the 90s.
Is there anything Pavlovian about that, where now when you hear like the beep, boop, you all of a sudden
I just want to shuffle.
You remember what it's like, how you're supposed to move your hands. No, both that and the, like, while you're watching TV, like, that all makes sense, where you're using up that time that otherwise would be sort of idle time, but you're doing something with it, and probably, and I would imagine that's easier than music. Like, it would be harder. Maybe for the internet you can have your guitar there or something, but not while you're watching TV, presumably.
No, it annoys my wife when because I have an electric guitar, so it's not like it's amplified, but still the plinking. The pick hitting the strings, and you can kind of still hear the music even though it's not amplified. And she's like turning up the TV just to drown out my fiddling.
One or both of you need the headphones.
Exactly.
But then you're basically just in the same room doing two different things. That's all right.
Yeah.
No, it's and it's funny how, I will normally, I think another thing that's interesting, that's important for folks to know, and sort of a line in the sand, is that I pretty much never perform magic socially, and you pretty much never perform magic professionally.
Correct.
And there is a really, those are different enough animals, even if we might be doing the same trick, or what appears to be the same trick. A lot of times, in my case, like, let's use a card trick as an example. If I'm doing a show, or whether I'm walking around at a party, or whether I'm, in front of a group of people, a deck of cards comes out, we do something impossible with it, and it goes away, and I'm on to something else. Right. So that deck of cards could be a trick deck, a one trick pony. It does this one thing well. And not and I have the either pocket space or the case space to be able to do that. Whereas if I was just sort of sitting at a table with some friends and let me show you, something, then it kind of makes more sense to have sort of your bare bones basic, just a regular deck of cards that you can do things with. And also I have found myself performing in less than desirable conditions regularly. And I mean, not regularly, but frequently enough that, I will often see some move and I will be really impressed by it. And a little twinge of me is like, oh man, I wish I could do that. But then the more I think about, would I be able to hit
practicality of
if it's kind of knacky and it only about 1 out of every 10 times it doesn't quite land the way you hoped, I'm a professional and I that may not be an option. I mean, maybe again that may just be the excuse for why I don't even want to go down that path.
Yeah, it's an excuse.
Sure, yeah, that's fine as long as we're on the same page.
Well, and I would say, as much as I love card magic, I do understand and actually feel when I'm performing for real people and not, and so, I do some, a fraction of obviously what you do as a professional magician, but as, I do the occasional gig every now and then. And I'll still do my hard stuff. That doesn't scare me. But I do understand when you're working for people, man, it's just like, hey man, you got to hit it every time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the more subtle methods, as long as they're at least equal or better than the sleight of hand, I completely understand, focusing on presentation, focusing on connecting with people. Yeah. The only thing I would say is that I have a number of heroes, I guess I would go, people I admire in the business.
Sure.
Darwin Ortiz out of DC would be an example. Kosti Kimlet out of Oakland or Orlando. Mm-hmm. I don't think Kosti does it anymore, but there was a period of time in his life where all he had was one deck of cards, and it was a mission on his part. It was an objective on his part that he just wanted to be able to walk up, bring out a deck of cards, and entertain for 20 minutes. Do we have time? I want to tell you a little anecdote. Sure. Yep. So on that point of entertaining with just cards, just sleight of hand, or having a variety of things, me as a magician who loves that, man, I sit down and do card tricks for 45 minutes. I'm cool with that.
Sure.
So, in fact, we were just talking about this before we hit record.
Mm-hmm.
I heard through the grapevine that there was this great show with these two phenomenal magicians.
Right.
Started at the Castle in LA. It went to the Geffen Theater. Mm-hmm. And this is 10, 12 years ago, probably.
Yeah.
And the two magicians, you may not have heard of, but if you haven't, look them up because they're excellent. Yeah. Helder Guimarães from Portugal, now lives in LA, and Derek DelGaudio.
Right.
Two just unbelievably talented young magicians, and so they were making this stir in L.A. I actually, I'll tell you a little story on top of a story.
Yeah.
So I'd heard about this in online forums, and this is so great, and I got to go see it. And I'm thinking it's going to have a run at the Geffen, and then it's done.
Sure. Yep.
So I'm sitting in bed one night with my wife, and we're going through our books or magazines we're reading before the lights get turned out, and I go, would you care if I went to L.A.? And my wife goes, sure. What for? And I went, a magic show. What was that?
Yeah.
A magic show. You're gonna fly. So I literally flew to L.A.
Yeah.
And I stayed there less than 24 hours. I was on a plane the next day before I had landed the previous day. Stayed at a friend's house. We went and saw this show, and it just blew me away.
Yeah,
right? And
this was Nothing to Hide.
The show was called Nothing to Hide.
Okay. Yep.
And it was an hour and 15 minutes of all card tricks, nothing else but card tricks.
Sure.
And I thought it was the greatest thing in the world.
Right.
And then I come home, and a couple of weeks later, I hear it's coming to New York. So I didn't have
which is what, 3.5 hours from us?
Right. We could easily drive there
by car.
Take the train or whatever.
Sure.
And geez. But I got to go see it again, and I'm going to take the wife, and I take 2 other magician friends of mine. We all go 6 of us, 3 couples, and the wives.
Okay.
So 3 magicians and 3 magicians' wives.
Sure.
And we see the show, and it's just as good, if not better. They've had time to work things out. It's just incredible.
Yeah.
And we get done. We go out to dinner afterwards, and all of the women were like, "It was okay."
Yeah.
And the 3 of us our heads were exploding. It was so good.
Yeah.
And so, excuse me, I tell that story in conjunction with what we were talking about because I do understand there is a limit, and it may be 1.
Yeah. Sure.
Or 2 at the most. I think most people, when they see a magician, especially in an event where obviously the person's being paid, it's just not impromptu, some guy in a coffee shop.
Yeah.
I do think they expect a little more than just all card tricks. I think they want to see some coins. They want to see neat things, interesting props, whatever.
Yeah.
So I get that, and so when I put together a set. Obviously, there's going to be cards, but there's, I know textural wise, I want other things.
Yeah, I think. Well, I saw Nothing to Hide, and the wife and I went up there to New York. Not we're not crazy. We didn't just drop everything and fly to L.A.
I don't blame you.
But honestly, my takeaway was sort of halfway between yours and your wife's, where I was like, I cannot imagine a better show that is all card tricks.
Right.
Which is still, I couldn't do any better. If that was the goal that you set out to accomplish, you 100% achieved it. Mm-hmm. But I've seen, it is by far not the best magic show that I've ever seen. Yeah. And I think a lot of that is because of the variety, but I believe that either extreme is bad, where one of the challenges when you bring out a deck of cards and then you have a lay person, someone in the audience who says, "Oh, I've seen this one." And it's, I've said before about it's like someone goes and sits down at a piano and someone's like, "Oh yeah, I've heard this song." It's absurd.
Right.
But I also think magicians have done it to ourselves, where there are often a few classic plots. The most obvious, of course, is pick a card, look at it, remember it, put it back in. We're going to shuffle it, and now I'm going to find it.
Pick a card, find a card.
Yeah, and there are. I think that we've done that to ourselves, and even there so much so that if I do a card trick now, and it's something where it's okay for me to know what the card is. Most volunteers are like, "Wait, are you sure?
Yeah,
are you
supposed to show this?
I thought like I've seen this trick before. The way it works is
right.
we keep it a secret from Mr. Magic."
Right.
And I'm already breaking the mold right there.
Yeah.
And
the thing with card magic that I love, and I don't think gets expressed enough in public, because when they see a card trick, it is almost always pick a card, find a card.
Yeah, right.
But the thing about card magic in general that I really gravitate towards is the fact that it is, first of all, there's so much in the subjectiveness, or the word I'm missing on the word that I'm thinking of. There's so much known about the card. It can be a card trick. It can also be used in poker, and it can have high stakes drama. It can be. There are elections in this country,
right,
that have a candidate pick a card, and when there's a tie. And whoever has the highest card is now the elected official.
Sure.
So, we've all heard stories of gambling, and, someone dies over trying to cheat on a card. So there's a lot inherent in that deck of cards that unfortunately most people just see as pick a card, find a card.
Sure.
And not only is it inherent in that there's a lot of drama in this deck of cards to start with, or should be at least.
Yeah.
There's also there's a myriad of plots beyond pick a card, find a card. There's memory, there's color separation, there's gambling demonstration. There's all these different things you can do with a deck of cards, which is why it attracts me. But going back to the music analogy that we talked about in practicing. There used to be an art form. There's not anymore, because everything's downloaded, and you like one track, you download one track.
Sure.
But there used to be an art form when you bought an album, So the kids out there, there used to be this vinyl thing that,
Sure.
Oh,
kids know what vinyl is.
No.
They don't know what 8-tracks are.
No,
but,
that's true. That's true.
Vinyl's
but,
back.
But vinyl or cassette,
Yeah.
there was an art form to putting together the songs in a specific order.
Right.
You want to start this and you want to bring it down, then you bring it back up again. And you would want to end the one side, because with vinyl, you'd had to flip it. And cassettes obviously had two sides. You sometimes had to flip it. Sometimes there was technology that would just continuously play. But
sure.
And even with DVDs, let's go back to DVDs, which aren't that old.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't have to flip anything, so you didn't have to worry about that break.
Yeah.
But there would be an art form to putting together, and I think that's analogous to magic in that, if you have all card tricks, it's all one song.
Yeah. Sure.
And so, I like to start with a card trick, and then I got a coin trick, and I got a rope trick, and I might come back to cards. And so I do like the texture, again, almost in that CD lining up of songs perspective, in that you want to have different textures. You want to have a slow song. You want to have a fast song, and and all like that. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I don't even know what the question was anymore. But
no. I don't know if there was a question. No, we're I mean, just the idea of this is the best that you can do with all card tricks.
Yeah.
But also that. I think a lot of it has to do with what an audience. Speaking of Derek DelGaudio, we're both fans of his one-man show in and of itself, which was not advertised, rightly so, as a magic show.
No, one-man show that had some magic in it.
Right, and so I think that as long as you're if people know that they're going to Nothing to Hide to see two really great card magicians do some of their best stuff, and that's what the show is, then hopefully folks aren't disappointed. But if they're expecting that a tiger is going to disappear at some point, then that's but that's again more of in the marketing end of it than in the than the
but expectations are a big deal.
Sure,
what people expect to see and what they ultimately see. Can affect their experience. But
sure.
Going back to and hold your point if I'm interrupting. For those out there, I'm going to get close to the mic to make sure.
NPR.
This is important.
All right.
For those of you who have not seen Derek DelGaudio or don't know what we're talking about, if you have Hulu, the show that I saw 4 times. Yeah. I flew out to LA for the first time on that one too.
Right. I remember that.
Well, we were on our 25th wedding anniversary trip. So we started in Napa. My wife and I started in Napa. We came down the coast, and it just so happened.
Sure it did.
That it was playing at the Geffen Theater when we were there. And I went,
nice.
I know it's our anniversary, but would you mind?
Yeah.
And she actually really loved that one.
Okay.
She loved that one a lot.
Yeah, that was great.
And so I saw it 3 more times when it came to New York. But the thing I was going to say is, if you don't know about this, go and you have Hulu. And if not, sign up for Hulu. It's worth it.
Yeah.
His show was ultimately filmed. He said it wasn't going to be.
Yeah.
And I think he was convinced to do it. Frank Oz from the Muppets, Jim Henson fame, and other great films and screenplays, directed it. He directed the theater show as well as the Hulu presentation. But it's on Hulu. I don't know how long it'll be. And it's been on there about a year, I guess.
Yeah.
And but in and of itself is what the show's called.
Yeah.
And it's really, really good.
Yeah, and I was impressed. I feel like that. I guess we'll call it a documentary. Literally a documenting of a thing that happened.
Yes.
Right. But while it was not the same experience as being in the room while that is happening, I thought that it is the next best thing. If you didn't get a chance to see it in person, then you're not going to do any better.
I was shocked at how good it was.
Yeah.
Because when I heard that they were doing it, I was going, there's just no, it was too personal of an experience.
Yep. Yeah.
To be in the same room. And there's actually an analogy, which without giving too much away, about being in the same room in a dark room while you're performing.
Yeah.
To have that then be translated. And I think it's the genius of Frank Oz, to be honest.
Yeah.
Because it was like you said, not necessarily as good as being there, but boy, was it a good second.
Yeah.
Really good second.
I'm glad at least that exists for us to relive and for people to
go see it.
Yeah. Well, I have several other things that I wanted to talk about, but we're going to have to save that for the next time we chat.
I'm a blabbermouth.
Yeah, no, this is important stuff. And again, for folks who are tuned into this, want to give them a sense that this is definitely the sort of thing that we just chat about backstage after a show. So that's it for this episode for my public shows and social media and special projects. You can head on over to oftheimpossible.com. That's Jeff Eline. I'm Peter Wood. Thanks.